What I'd like to do today is I'd like to talk briefly about what is a scholarly edition and why does it matter, and then talk about what the press has tried to do about that over the last 120 years or so, and then talk about what the press is doing about that now in terms of Oxford scholarly editions online. Okay? Everybody with me? All right. So, true story. Once upon a time in America, there was a man who was a world-famous scholar. His name was F.O. Matheson. And Matheson was the regnant chief of American literature. Every book he published got widely reviewed. He had appointments at Yale and at Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Chicago and so on. And he was, technical term, the bee's knees. And Matheson was reading an edition of a book by Herman Melville, a book that nobody reads, and it's a good thing because it's not very interesting, called White Jacket. But it was important because he was supposed to be a Melville expert. And he came across a line in this novel by Herman Melville, whom you will know because he wrote Moby Dick. And he came across this line, the soiled fish of the sea. And he wrote an article about this amazing line, and I know it seems pretty nerdy, but that's what English professors do. He wrote an article about how, he said, only Melville could come up with this adjective, the soiled fish of the sea, and how this notion of the soiled fish lying there on the deck was a kind of prolepsis, a kind of foretaste of what was to come in the soiled and the immaculate, the embodiment of evil in the person of Moby Dick, the great whale. And this article came out, and everybody said, oh my God, Matheson's made this amazing literary discovery. He's so brilliant. He sort of seized on this one word in White Jacket, and he found the foretaste of Moby Dick and all the rest. Until someone said, man, I read that book several times, and I don't remember that. And he went back into his edition, and he said, it's not here. And I read it again. It's not here. And he found the right passage, and then he found what edition Matheson was reading, and he found out that Matheson was reading a rotten, unacademic, 19th century reprint of Melville's novel. And it was The Coiled Fish of the Sea. And Matheson had written this whole article about this, and a firestorm ensued, and he got caught in his intellectual underwear feeling the breeze. And what was so problematic about that was he had been seen as the kind of unassailable critic. Well, it is funny, but it's also very sad. Not primarily because of this, but with this as a contributing factor. Within the year of this error being pointed out, Professor Matheson committed suicide. The text that scholars read matters everything to them because all their interpretations are based on what's in the text. And so if the text is defective, the interpretations are going to be effective. So the business of the scholarly edition is to try to find ways to transmit a reliable text to scholars, whether they be of philosophy, of history, of English literature, and so on. And so, in this particular case, somebody's reputation was riding on it. Sometimes it's not just a little typo. There's a woman whom you may not know named Marion Moore. She was one of the very important poets in America of the 20th century. And she came out in 1919 with a poem called poetry. It was kind of her artistic manifesto. And the poem had 30 lines in it. And because it was her artistic manifesto, and over the years she was kind of growing and changing as a poet, she came out with she kept changing the poem, and it kept appearing in her works, and it appeared in 29 lines, and then in an edition of 15 lines, an edition of 13 lines. It kept changing, so every time the poem was different, because it was her manifesto. And in 1967, in her definitive collected works that she supervised through the press, it's 3 lines long. Now, people want that 30-line poem. People want that originary poem. They don't want the little tiny statement at the end of her life when she was an old woman and said, yeah, I did it, and this is all I have to say. If you want the rest, read my poetry. People want the full statement. But what's the text of the poem? Is it the 30-line version, the 29-line version, the 13-line version, the 15-line version? I think there may be a 16 or 17-line version, I don't remember, but you get the point. What is the text, and how would you know? Well, if you were a reader just coming to Merriam-Moore, you don't want to have to decide that question on your own. Why? Because it would take you days and weeks to find a judicious answer for that. Well, that's what the reader depends upon the editor for. And so good scholarly editions are always critical editions.